to you guys. Cheers to surviving lockdown. Cheers to surviving through this last 65 days. And cheers to the blessings that you have. So I'm very excited and I'm so honored that you guys are here today as well to be in this session with me. I'm seeing some familiar faces. I'm seeing some cameras off, so I'm going to ask TV and Monday, I don't know who else, like Melissa, to turn on your cameras just so we can see you guys and just so that we can feel a little bit closer to you guys. But thank you so much for everybody who's sort of been on the journey with me around sipsessions, and I'm very excited for my speaker who's here today to join us and also give us insights and make us feel like we are all okay and we are all navigating okay through lockdown. We may feel like things are a bit disorganized and structured, like not structured at the moment, but I think we're all doing okay, and this is the time where you can raise your hand and Linda is here to have the conversation with us. Just before I introduce my amazing guest, can I ask everybody in the chat just to type in, what are you sipping on? And what is the inspiration behind it? So I'm sipping on a Steenberg MCC, and the reason I'm sipping on it is because bubbles remind me of celebration. They remind me of a good time. They remind me of energy, and I chose Steenberg specifically because that was the last place or wine estate that I visited with Josie in Cape Town before we got to lockdown. So it reminds me of the last time I was outside. So please, on the chat, if you know the chat is at the bottom, please can you guys type in what you're drinking, what inspired it? Did you have a long day? Did you have a good day? And if your drink reflects how you're feeling, then you can also add that. So I see Vic says he's having cognac because it's cold. Linda, who is my co-host, and I'm so excited because I've spent a short time with her, but I feel like I've known her for such a long time. Linda Mthenjane is a clinical psychologist, and she spent, I think, a lot of her time sort of in corporate, in the financial services, working in the human capital space. So if I'm correct, it's the First Rand Group, South Africa, or First Rand Group. And after working in the First Rand Group, you then have now obviously sort of followed you're practicing now, which is your purpose, your dream, and you're really living, who you are meant to be, which I love so much. And I hear that every time I speak to you about what you're doing for relationships, what you're doing for African marriages, what you're doing for young people, and how passionate you are around sort of how young people and couples are dealing with different issues. So I'm so excited. And Linda, I would also like to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself.
Oh, there we go.
Yes. And you can let us know what you're sipping on and why.
Oh, wow. So I am an MCC person as well. So Prosecco, love it. Reminds me of a beautiful summer afternoon, just sitting around with friends. So yes, I recreating that in my mind. It's a little bit cold, but that's what I'm going for.
I love that. So Linda, just about, we've spoken about a lot of things, from lockdown, from how are you dealing with your practice virtually. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, just what you're doing, and then how you've managed through lockdown, sort of managing your practice, managing your personal life, professional life, and some of the philanthropy stuff you're doing. If you could share that with us.
Sure. You've done a really good job, Nomzamo, introducing me. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am so blessed to be part of this group. Thank you very much for inviting me, Nomzamo. Yeah, so what am I doing? Where am I going?
Where are we going?
Where are we going? So lockdown's been very interesting because for many reasons, this is a good time, and I say this, for psychologists. And for the first time, people are taking issues of mental health really seriously.
For sure.
So, and that's a good thing. And it's an important thing, especially in our community, where I don't think we've spent enough time just talking about it. A lot of stigma around things like depression, bipolar, anxiety. So it's a good time.
Sure.
And it's important that we actually do a lot to let people understand what it's all about. So because I see couples mainly in my practice, the virtual way of seeing patients has been very difficult. And for the most part, I've actually decided not to do it. But we're back in full swing. In May, we were back in full swing.
That's good.
And yes, so I'm blessed because I have older children. So a lot of what I'm hearing around having to be a teacher, a wife, a cook, a lover, you know, some of those roles, fortunately, I can discard of. Because I have a teenager in grade 11 who pretty much runs her own life, and a university student. So that's been very useful. So
Sure.
this time has been a time of a lot of hard work,
Sure.
And very busy, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
And teenagers, are you not dealing with any mood swings or any sort of just kids that are staying in their rooms the whole day and coming out when they're hungry?
Before lockdown, yes. But during lockdown, I mean, what we've done is we actually have, and I've you know, I kind of talked to a lot of my clients around this, you know, creating, first of all, clear boundaries. When you're in your room, it's your space, but we have very specific times around coming out and making sure there's connect time, there's family time.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really enjoyed was really getting to know the people that I live with. You think you know people, but you actually don't. Played a lot of those games of, why do you believe my favorite color is red? What is it about me that really pisses you off? What do I do very well as a mom?
Yeah.
So we had a lot of those over the past 10 weeks. Some very difficult conversation, lots of tears, as teenagers often do. But yes, I must say it was a good bonding time. I must also, though, admit the first day that I went out to the practice, got dressed up, was probably the best day that I've had in 10 weeks.
That's so funny. I was actually saying that I was having an Instagram live with Tobile, another lady that's on here. And I was saying to her that at some point, lockdown going to Woolworths became such a fun activity because you were dressing up and you were going, as much as you were just going to get essentials, but it was new human beings and an outing. You were getting into the car, you were kind of feeling a little bit normal, even though everybody's in masks. But I hear you about the joy and the, you know, that happiness of, I mean, even now I'm a bit happy because I'm actually like, I've dressed up, I've put a little bit of makeup, I've put some earrings on. So I kind of feel like, okay, life could feel normal once again. So I completely agree with you on that.
In fact, it's what we often don't think about. And that's one of the things, so that's one of the things that people have lost in terms of lockdown, right? So we know the big losses. You know, some people have lost their jobs, other people have lost loved ones, but there are a whole lot of little losses that we've all experienced. And when we take stock, we realize, you know, hate traffic, but geez, the pause that traffic caused between home and work was amazing. And I miss that.
For sure.
And now everything kind of bleeds into each other. And we've, you know, I'm finding that a lot of people that I'm speaking to are saying that is very difficult to kind of sit in one chair. And a lot of corporates, of course, are finding it almost, what I'm finding is, especially people who are in corporate, they're sitting in one chair, kind of 7 to 7, and with very little break, almost working a lot harder than they should. And that's been a bit of a sad thing to watch with my husband specifically.
There's been no boundaries as well. So even just connecting, you're connecting on Zoom calls, you're connecting on social media, you're connecting on the news. So, I mean, how, you know, what kind of trends have you seen? Because for me, it feels like there's the lines have blurred, like you're saying. It's like there's no real work hours. Then there was a boom of social media. So there was, you know, there was house party for some people, there was Zoom, there was, you know, all these apps and stuff that popped up. That at what point, even in a house, are you, you know, disconnecting from the news, the TV, your cell phone, to actually engaging with the people that you live with, you know, like that are in your house or your family? You know, how do people disconnect?
Well, Nomzamo, you switch off. You press the off button. I think that's like it's quite an important thing to do.
Yeah.
I think with a lot of families, people have actually had structured time where they have said, kind of between this time and that time, we're switching everything off. We're playing cards, we're playing Monopoly, we're playing Scrabble, or we're just talking. So I think having if you dedicate and set boundaries around time, you actually find that it does help you structure the way you're feeling even. It helps you structure your level of anxiety, your level of excitement. So I think the structuring of time and deliberately agreeing on when is going to be done what, but also move around. Like if you have the fortune of a slightly bigger house, moving around in different rooms, changing the scenery, all of these things, as simple as they are, kind of help you manage your own levels of anxiety and your own levels of tiredness and boredom.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I mean, just personally for me, lockdown has felt quite like, like it came so, like it came so quickly. I think a lot of people were in that denial phase. And if you were like me, you went into the denial phase for like a while. So even when it was like level 5 for, the first 21 days, I think I was still in denial because I was still, thinking that, oh, okay, lockdown, like Corona hadn't really, sunk in for me. It hadn't really, I kind of think I was just in a world of like, oh, okay, this thing isn't really happening. But I just want to speak to you a little bit about that depression element, just because for me, when I hear the word depression, it sounds like this, hectic thing, and you're like in a dark room and lights are off, curtains are closed, and, you're under the blankets, not eating for 3 days. But obviously from research and just talking to you, depression isn't as blatant as that. It isn't as like, you just obviously windows closed and stuff, but it could be even like a slow, and maybe this is what I'm asking you, like, maybe is it a slow progression? Is it something that, you might not know you're in, but, I don't know if somebody else needs to identify it for you, or, is it something that, how clear is it for somebody to say that, okay, actually now I feel this way and now I am, in this depression state of mind?
So it is unfortunate that one of the things that the internet hasn't served us well with is that, and I remember doing this when we were doing our masters, where you read the disorder, you read all the symptoms and you think, oh, I'm that. Yeah. I'm narcissistic, I'm depressed, I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Which it's not quite, right? So one of the things with depression is, the symptoms have to persist over a period of time. Right, that's very important.
For sure.
But what's also important is it's a combination of symptoms. So it's not just dark rooms. Dark rooms are one of them. Yeah. It's not just not getting out of bed. Getting out of bed is one of them.
One of them.
It's appetite. It's just a listfulness and apathy and just not wanting or not feeling or not being able to. And more often than not, if it's clinical depression, it's one of those things that actually within yourself that you actually cannot, even if you tried very hard, you can't. It's like trying to get out of bed in a bad dream. And in that dream, your legs are just limp. You can't move.
For sure.
And then you know that things are not going very well. And yes, your family is critical. And I believe very strongly in relationship therapy. So it's usually the people around you who do see the change in behavior.
For sure.
And they kind of highlight it to you. And yes, there are times when you don't know. It doesn't creep up, but it's certainly a build-up. It's hardly ever a sudden, today you were this way and tomorrow that way. That's a different disorder.
For sure. Right? Yeah.
So it kind of creeps up. It has to take a little bit of time. And there are different symptoms that you have to exhibit, or we can call it depression.
Yeah. The reason I ask you is because the biggest change for me during lockdown has been, the loss of employment. But I obviously don't think I'm depressed. But I think I kept on asking, sort of, am I reacting in the way one should react? Because I'm not like sad. I'm not, I'm not depressed, but I've kind of, maybe I'm still internalizing it, I'm processing it. And a lot of people might be facing, the same or different scenarios where either they've lost their jobs or lost they have a loss of income, or their partner has lost their job, and they don't know how to deal with that person because they might be in a depressed state of mind or might be acting quite differently. You know, they could be angry, they could be, so the loss of income has a big mental or like a psychological impact on you, right? So you already have this thing of, okay, I'm not getting paid, and you start thinking and calculating and all sorts of things. So for me, one of the changes and one of the things that I had to kind of, you know, get through was like, okay, I've lost my job, but how do I also communicate effectively with my partner to make sure, and I mean, my husband kept on asking me, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. But even he didn't believe me that I was okay. But, you know, if you don't have a partner who's very open, maybe their communication's not as great, maybe they're going through anger or depression, you know, what are the sort of, you know, what do you, or, you know, when someone comes to you and says, my partner is completely not opening up to me and they're not communicating to me effectively, what then, you know, because now we're in this for like, you know, lockdown has been on for 65 days. You can't not be talking to me like as a partner.
Yeah. So, I mean, Nomzamo, I think that it's important that we allow ourselves to stand exactly where we stand. I mean, the most important thing is if in you're true to the way that you're feeling, as opposed to, right? So there isn't a right and a wrong in terms of how you should be reacting to any loss for that matter, right? But knowing what you now know about the 5, in fact, there are 6 stages of loss, you know, you can kind of get a sense of, okay, so maybe it could be, if I'm really okay, that it was the right thing for me to do.
Yeah.
You ask yourself the question, is it that I am actually masking because I'm actually inside denial in a protective way, right? And only you can know that. But I mean, if you talk about wanting to talk to someone who doesn't open up for whatever reason, whether it's about jobs that are lost or anything, I mean, there are a couple of things that are important. And often I say, you know, it's you in the relationship, right? It is your partner in the relationship, but there's also the space between the two of you. And it's all those 3 things that determine whether or not someone will open up. So first things first is you need to look at you. So how are you speaking? Yeah. Well, do you have what we call a soft startup? Right? And a soft startup,
I'm not a soft starter.
Yeah, you see, and how does people open up? Because a soft startup is certainly not, and let me tell you, firstly, I think that is not a soft starter.
Yeah.
Allow for anyone to come in
Women are not really good first starters though, generally. Women, we go in, like when we fight with you, we go in.
So Nomzamo, it is very important, and I see a lot of women on this chat, very important that one of the things we teach ourselves is to have a soft startup. Because if you have a soft startup, it's one of the best ways that you can ensure that you're actually going to have a conflict that you can live beyond. Because remember, conflict is actually good, right? Conflict is growth. And if you handle it properly, there's a lot that you can learn about each other and what the one likes and what the other one doesn't like.
For sure.
So you can run away from conflict. But let's get back to your question. So your question was, how do you get someone who isn't speaking to speak? So first thing is the way you're showing up in that relationship, in that conversation over this time. You kind of need to check yourself. So it's around soft startup. But it's also around whether or not you have a sense of fondness and admiration for this person. So if someone feels that you hold them in high regard in the relationship, whether with the soft startup, the chances of them opening up is high. Right? So there are quite a few things as an individual you need to look at. Of course, it's true, your partner themselves could have something from long ago, from childhood, that he or she needs to look at. Of course, that's true as well, right? But what I want to address as a third element is the space between the two of you. So if the space, which is like just the energy and the feel, if that is a little bit prickly, and often than not it's prickly, then it's poisonous. And it becomes very difficult for people to let their guards down, be vulnerable, and jump into that space.
Yeah.
Right? And we know there are really 4 things that make that space prickly. There are many, but there are 4 that I think are very important.
Yeah.
One is criticisms, right? So if you're used to saying, vele wena, like, yeah, okay, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's true, but criticisms, nah, they don't actually make that space open and allow a person to jump in. The other one is defensiveness. So every time we are big and now we are big, we are big and now we are
That's
big.
me. I'm definitely the defensive. I'll take box number 2. I'm like, yeah, you did this, well, you didn't do this, so actually, okay, well.
The problem with defensiveness is it never allows you to take a step back and just reflect on the impact of your own behavior in the space, right? So defensiveness is a big one. Criticism is a big one. But also another one that's quite big, and it's quite a popular one, is something that we call contempt, which is just almost looking down your nose at your partner as if you're the better person. Yeah. Yeah, if I had done it, I don't think I would have lost the child in the mall, or, well, children get lost in the mall. It happens, type of thing. So
Sure.
It's just really always thinking that you are slightly better than the person, and putting it forward in different ways, subtle ways. And these 3 actually play a relay in poisoning the space between the 2 of you. And eventually what you find is people just stonewall. They just shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now is like the end. So when someone has decided, I'm actually not even engaging,
For
you
sure.
actually didn't say anything,
For
or
sure.
I'm walking every time you speak,
For sure.
that becomes difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, a lot of people are dealing with, with those 4 things, because it's additional stress. So it's not, the conflict, the criticism, the contempt, the way you're speaking to your partner, the way you're speaking to kids, your children, that stress is coming just from, COVID is part of that stress, work is part of that stress, or, so, maybe right now, are we not acting as good moms, partners, just because of lockdown? Or some articles I've read have said everything's been amplified, that actually you being your real self now. So am I my real self now during lockdown, or are things just amplified because we're in lockdown?
So it's quite interesting, because of the couples that I see, what I find is that a lot of the time, where there were cracks already and people have refused to look at the cracks, then, what lockdown's going to do is just, blow the paper that's sitting over those cracks.
Yeah.
But where there's things like admiration and fondness, where there's general positivity in the space, what lockdown does is it brings cracks, but it's light that shines through those cracks.
I hear you.
And it shows the couple which way to go. So, I mean, with lockdown, for instance, and there are people who have found lockdown to be an amazing experience, right? It doesn't have to be a negative experience.
Yeah.
Yes, we can go through ups and downs, but the essence of being, especially if it's not an abusive relationship, right?
For
if
sure.
It's an abusive relationship, of course, that's a different story. But the essence of being close to people over a period, being able to define boundaries, being able to put together time that's yours, that's ours, that's the couple's, that kind of practice session for when we become a lot more hectic again, it's actually a blessing.
For sure.
It's a blessing. Yeah.
If I'm isolated alone, what is my joy? How am I finding that joy again?
So what's quite important is our relationship. I mean, the only person we're going to be with for the rest of our lives is ourselves. So the starting point is truly your relationship to yourself, right?
For sure.
And maybe your lesson for lockdown is, what is your relationship to yourself?
For sure.
And what do you need to do to improve the relationship with you, right?
For sure.
But having said that, I, for instance, have a neighbor an awful neighbor for many, many years. We've been here for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
But what's happened over lockdown is my Catholic upbringing didn't allow me not to reach out. And, you know, when you reach out like this and you actually don't want to, but you do.
Let me be a good person.
And she's on her own. And it's been the most revealing relationship of me, of who I am and what I'm about, and of her. So I don't know what she would say, but one of the things about being alone is that you're actually never quite alone, right?
For sure.
One, you have you, but two, you have all of these tools to connect to the others.
For sure.
If you really wanted to, right? It's a matter of, from a mindset and a shift perspective, realizing that there's a different way of connecting, one that you didn't do before.
Because loneliness is a big thing, right? So I mean, loneliness is also not far from depression. So loneliness is also a feeling of nobody hears me, I'm not seen, I'm not heard as well.
Yes, Nomzamo, but it's different. So being alone and being lonely are two different things.
Sure.
So people who are isolated or who are social distancing on their own are not necessarily lonely. They may be alone,
for sure,
but they're not really lonely.
For sure.
Certainly just harnessing and trying to improve the relationship with self first actually is an important. And then looking around that neighbor that didn't speak to, your sister's children who actually maybe you can help with. And that's another thing that I found. Certainly in my circle of friends, especially teenage children, they actually admire that funky architectural aunt who is the same as you, but they think they can get better information from about stuff that you could tell them. Right?
For sure.
So beautiful time of them linking to other people and kind of outsourcing the difficult conversations to those people who they admire.
For sure.
Really, it's worked with children.
Yeah, for sure.
Really
I hear you. But Linda, for me now going forward, we're gonna have to unlock now. So now we got used to this way of managing our relationships in lockdown. Now, as we're going towards level 3 and 2 and 1, we now have to go, or we need to now rewire ourselves a little bit in terms of now going back to whatever the normal will look like. And for me, in my case, where the whole retrenchment and loss of my employment has been okay while my husband has been home. And now I'm starting to think about, okay, when he's not here, is this now going to be a more of a reality for me that, oh, okay, he's gone, I actually don't have a job anymore. And, at that point, maybe it'll become real for me. So, going into unlockdown as we go down the levels, how are we now going to rewire or, tell our brains that, okay, now we're going back to this, or, and for sure we'll never go back to a normal, but, how do we now, our relationships will go, a little bit back to normal than they are now.
Yes. So one of the things that does still concern me a bit is that, with the losses that we've been talking about over the past 20 minutes, one new loss that we're actually getting is, one new fear that we're getting over and above the losses is the fear of infection. So we were cocooned, and we did the right things, bought the masks, sanitizers, but now, you're going to be going back to work, your children are going to be going out there. So there is going to be a slightly heightened sense of fear that we all experience, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
Which means that our adult brain, our frontal lobe has got to kick in around the protocols that we must introduce in our homes, right? And the education, because I'm not seeing it on TV, the education that we must give to especially our children who, just take this scenario, Nomzamo. The 7-year-old, that girls, for the most part, thrive in groups, especially in primary school and high school. Now, you can't hug or touch, which is the usual human contact. And actually, if so-and-so doesn't hug or touch you, that could be saying something to you. And it could actually be quite complex in terms of the emotions that your child comes back from school with. So it's not just whether my mask fell off, but it's also that I didn't get the elbow greeting. Or the leg greeting. And maybe it's because they think I have it. So there are definitely things that we have to prepare our minds around, especially when we're dealing with children, right? And it really is about open, intentional dialogue. So we have to purposefully speak. And a lot of us have not had relationship training or relationship skills training.
For sure.
But the purposeful, intentional dialogue of, this is what's going to happen. How are we going to deal with it if this happens?
Yeah.
If that happens, if you see A, B, C, D, tell so and so, you know. So there's going to have to be a lot of very deliberate education. And when you talk about your situation, which is similar to many people, of the reality of not actually having a job.
Yeah.
Maybe your loss process, your grieving process will start then.
Yeah.
But then you'll know.
Yeah.
So if you're sad or angry, you'll know I am walking through a normal grieving process, and it is not for me to now try and seek psychiatric help or tablets.
Yeah.
It's a process that I need to go through so that I can get to acceptance, because it's only in acceptance when I know that I can find the wherewithal to find something new, right?
For sure.
And you go back and forth in that grieving process.
For sure.
I think it's important to understand that grieving process, because Nomzamo, you're going to walk through it over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think so. So I do feel that I am still in denial.
Just a question from my side. So obviously I live with my partner, and we also have a housemate. And we live in a nice cabin out in Cape Town, but it's really been difficult for me because I moved down, so I'm originally from Cape Town, and then I moved to Sandton in last year, and then came back to Cape Town because it was difficult on our relationship. But the flatmate's still with us, or the housemate. And it has just really been difficult because, yes, in my relationship, it's been like lockdown has been great for our communication. But when it came to having this third person in the house, and just like with chores, and it's a guy, it was just really difficult for me to have one-on-one conversations with my partner about things that would frustrate me about the housemate. And it just like created so much tension in our relationship, where now we're not even talking about it at all. And that's causing me a lot of, I don't want to say anxiety, but it really saddens me, because we would speak about everything, and now this is one thing that we're not speaking about at all.
This is one of those things that I think needs a separate conversation. But the long and short of it is, the question you really need to be asking yourself is, what is it about that conversation that scares me the most? What I believe, standing up for myself like I have before, what am I going to lose? You know, am I prepared to lose what I am going to lose? Right? And if you're able to be honest about that, you can have the conversation. And the conversation goes like this. It's important, first of all, to just, so it's important to just ask the individual, or ask your boyfriend or your partner for time, and make it very clear. You know, I really want to talk about the housemate. Can we do this later on today? Can we do it now? So that he prepares himself for this conversation, and you're prepared for this conversation. In the conversation, when you're having it, I think what's very important is to own the way you're feeling about this, right? It's very important to own the way that you're feeling about it, but to actually be quite uncategorical about what it's going to mean if the two of you can't change it, right? So you put your case forward, and then you step back and you allow him to talk to you about what's happening with him in this part. What is this connection? What is this difficulty? And why is this choice him and not you, right? But you have got to stand in front of him and be naked about how you're feeling, and see how he's able to respond to that. Because the way he's able to respond to that tells you a lot about the relationship, right? So try that.
For me, basically, I'm recently single. I'm a single mom. Started a new job, juggling studies, juggling looking after my son, juggling everything, right? And what's making me nervous is I've been coping so well on my own. because I'm not dependent on anybody. I don't have to seek anybody to help me with anything. I'm literally doing everything on my own. So what scares me about coming out of lockdown is the prospect of meeting somebody new, letting somebody into my space, letting basically being vulnerable again and leaning on somebody again, and that scares me. I'm loving lockdown because I'm on my own, but the prospect of going back again to real life is like, oh God, I don't want to do this. How do I deal with that?
So, you know, how do you cope with that? It depends what it is you're dealing with. It could be fear of going back in. It depends what you're dealing with. And one would have to take a little bit more time. And this is why I often don't want to do these talks, because you actually need to get into understanding what else is underneath there. What actually are you dealing with that scares you about the opening up of the world, right? Because in understanding that, and in understanding some of the maps that you already carry, one can then help you look at, okay, so if these are the maps that you carry, if this was the hurt that you're walking into the new world with, you know, how do you slice and dice that and start to come to some sort of acceptance? Now, we're not going to do that in this conversation, but it's certainly something that speaking to a therapist or even a counselor is something that can happen, where we help you dissect exactly what it is that you fear. Because vulnerability is a big word, and in there a whole bunch of things. Anxiety is a big word, and in there a whole bunch of emotions, fears, what happened in the previous relationship, depending on the age of your son, what those anxieties bring. There are lots of moving parts here, which make it very difficult to have a definite do this. The one thing I do want to say, though, is that we were not really meant to be alone. I believe that with all my heart. And I'm saying this to everyone on the chat screen that is single as well. So, and when I say not alone, I may not even mean a male companion. I could mean a female companion as well. But connection and companionship is a basic human need. And no matter what happens, you need to find it in the safest spots that you want to find it. We're not, as humans, we weren't built to really be alone. The kind of impact that has on us into our 50s and 60s is not positive.
Yeah, love it. Thanks, Linda.
Linda, I wanted us to just get some perspective for you on this concept of self-care. So you get a lot of on the internet, everyone's like, take a bath, have a glass of champagne, and suddenly that's self-care. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that in terms of unpacking. And I find that, you know, it's mostly women who do self-care, but self-care is actually a thing that, you know, both genders should be prioritizing. So I think my question to you is, what is self-care really, and what should we be doing to take care of self, whether in a relationship or outside of a relationship?
That's also a lovely question. Thank you for these questions. So firstly, you're absolutely correct. What is spoken about in terms of baths and champagne is one type of it. So there's emotional self-care and there's physical self-care. And I guess there are many others. I often say that you can't pour from an empty cup. So it becomes quite important that you fill your own cup. And one of the most important elements for me around self-care is actually self-compassion, right? And that's really just treating yourself as you would a best friend. So the way that you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, the way that you allow yourself some leniency, especially women, strong professional women. So self-compassion for me is almost the first and most important element around mental self-care or emotional self-care, self-compassion. Because when you have self-compassion, it is easier to have a heightened self-esteem. And self-esteem just basically means I hold myself in high regard, regardless of the mistakes that I make. Right? So that actually is an important one. But another one that's important, and there are few, I'm just going to name two that are not usually spoken about. So self-compassion. The second one that I think is an important one is acknowledging and allowing your feelings. So more often than not, what we find is that when you're feeling like Nomzamo was talking about, I don't feel right now, I think I'm good, right? That's okay, right? But when she gets to a point, or if she gets to a point where she's feeling really low, Hosie's gone to work, and the house is empty, and she's done all the Netflix, she's done the peanut butter and jam sandwiches, and she's still feeling low, right? The ability for her to face the feeling of feeling low, to give it a name, I feel sad, right? And then to walk straight into that feeling and allow it to just envelope her and be her sad self. Very important element of self-care. Allowing the feeling that you're feeling, naming it, allowing it, and just really riding that wave, and just because emotions need motion. They will move through your body and they'll move out. But if you push against them, they will push right back, right? And that's where you then crack as a human being. Right? So that's a critical one that I would absolutely encourage in terms of emotional self-care. I think a third one is the way that you think about the world. So more often than not, right now, especially, people are having what David Kistler calls anticipatory grief, which is, oh my God, my children are going to get sick, and he's asthmatic, he's going to die. And if he dies, when I bury him, I can only have 50 people there, right? So that's called anticipatory grief, because you're feeling the grief long before it happens, right? So I would say emotional self-care in that case would be allow that full scenario to play itself out, of your son getting sick, of you burying your son, of you feeling sad. And then what you do immediately, so don't push against it, right? But what you do immediately is you play a different movie in your head, right? And the movie is, I am a capable mom who can afford hospitalization. My son is not sick right now. He's actually quite well. He's playing with his brother in the other room. And you know what? Right now, presentism, right now, we're all okay. And you'll see how that calms you down a lot. There are many other emotional self-care or mental self-care tips and guides, but those three always stand out for me as being very important. And I'm going to make a judgment call here. Did you say your name was Toby? Did you say your name was Toby?
Toby?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry? Toby, yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to make a judgment call. I'm looking at your shirt and your blazer, and I'm going to say, I must add a fourth one, which is let go of control. Control the stuff you can. Can't control the mom who's not doing the mask. Can only control your mask. Can only control your hand washing, all right? And when you agree that that's what you want to control, the things that you can control, alleviates your anxiety, right? So those four would be my top four for emotional self-care.
Hey, what's up? Amazing session. The question for me is just the exhaustion of change. I just feel like I'm constantly trying to morph into this version of myself that has to adapt to a new reality. COVID is a massive change, but not so long ago, I was going through another change and another change. It just feels like I'm not catching my breath in terms of being able to deal with the issues that we face on a daily basis. What are the tools that we should be building up as people, that I should be building up as Tebogo, in dealing with some of this massive amount of change that is here and that's about to come?
Yeah, what a beautiful and big question, Tebogo. Thank you so much for asking it. especially because just the openness to put it out there that there are things that you're not coping with, can I tell you that is absolutely step one. Because until you've named it as something that you're not coping with, definitely you're unable to deal with it. So hats off to you for that. Look, one of the mindsets that we need to cultivate is that of almost, it's called kind of flexibility and adaptability. I can't see that many things are going to stay the same beyond this. Outside of the normal changes that we've known, whether it's job changes or even load shedding, which we've now all forgotten about, nothing is actually going to remain the same. We know that. And our only savior then is to cultivate flexibility. And what does that actually mean, and adaptability? And quite simply, what it means is having almost a hard, soft way of planning. So hard as in, I know where I want to go. These are my goals. This is my vision. I know generally the road that's going to take me there, but that's where the soft comes. But I'm willing to explore different roads that I haven't yet thought about. So it's a mindset that is directional, yet it's soft in the way that it allows you to be moved by the wind, but the North Star is actually quite clear. And like the lady before, like Toby was talking about, loads and loads of mental and physical self-care in that flexibility, because it's being flexible means that, you know, like a palm tree in gale winds, you're going to be moved from left to right. But as long as your anchor around, I know who I am, I know what I want, directionally, I know which way I want to go, I am good, right? This is very much a palm tree situation that we're all in right now. And I think that also just coming to and talking to people like you are and allowing yourselves amongst 39 other people to just say, this is me, that openness tells me that you are one of those people who will sway with the wind. It will be hard, it will be painful. You'll go through your grieving stages that we spoke about, but you will conquer. You kind of will move on through it. Yeah? And I think one of the things we all need to accept is that adulting, as young people call it, is a tricky one of a lot of sobering, difficult pieces, and then lots of joy as well that comes with that. Self-compassion, very important. I haven't yet seen the South African stats, but if you look at the Chinese stats around divorce, and you look at the US stats, especially in places like New York and Utah around suicide, yes, we are in a difficult time, but I have a sense, South Africans are funny people. We kind of just bounce and continue.
For
Not
sure.
necessarily a good thing, but we
find humor in everything.
Also not necessarily a good thing. I'm not sure we're dealing with stuff, but there is a resilience to this nation that's slightly different for the people who've never been through trauma. Because that's the other thing. It depends whether or not you've been through trauma. If you haven't been through trauma, this is big. But if you have been, you've probably picked up some good coping skills. You're using them as you're walking. You're not liking what's going on, but you're okay. You're okay. You know, it's no real closing thoughts except to say the fact that you've taken time to be part of a session like this just tells me that there's a lot of amazing young, I see mainly very young people on this platform. So I want to thank you, not just for coming here and listening and writing your comments, but for supporting a really amazing Black initiative from Nomzamo. I think it's important. I think we should keep these conversations going, because this is what builds all of us as a nation, as young professionals. I would love to engage further. If you have any thoughts, Nomzamo has my email. Please feel free to just drop thoughts. Yes, I run a business when I run my practice, but conversations over emails are more than welcome.
Mama, Vic, let's turn on our cameras just as we peace out. Some Kwanazis over there. Langa in the US. I just want to say love and light, and I want to ask you guys to lift up your glass cup, sippy cup, water and lemon. And I just want to say we are going to shape the world with the conversations we're having on Sipsessions. Cheers to all of you. You can all unmute and say cheers.
Cheers.
And good evening. Have a good evening.